Asset coverage must include every place your code and data live, whether cloud-based or on-premises, because blind spots create silent exposure. Start with a reconciled inventory that ties business services to hosts, containers, functions, and devices, and keep it updated through automated discovery. Tag assets with ownership, criticality, and environment so triage later has context. Cloud-native components, like managed databases or serverless functions, require different collection methods than traditional servers, so your tooling mix must match your stack. On-premises appliances and endpoints cannot be afterthoughts. Prove they are visible in the same dashboards. A small scenario demonstrates the risk. A forgotten staging subnet holds an old build agent that still accepts inbound connections. Without inventory parity, scans miss it and attackers find it first. Comprehensive coverage is the foundation. Every later metric, decision, and report relies on this single source of truth. Authenticated scanning across all tiers turns surface impressions into reliable findings. Unauthenticated probes can hint at issues, but credentials reveal configuration truth, patch levels, and real exposure. Use least privilege accounts designed for scanning, rotate them on a defined cadence, and record where authentication succeeded or failed. Extend coverage to application layers and containers so base image flaws and library issues appear alongside operating system items. In virtualized or cloud environments, pair network scans with agent-based checks to capture ephemeral assets that appear and vanish within hours. A common misconception is that authenticated scanning slows production. In reality, careful scheduling, throttling, and scoping prevent disruption while producing richer data. When assessors ask why a host shows no results for months, your logs should show an authentication failure and a tracked fix, not silence. Depth, not guesswork, earns confidence at R2. Severity, exploitability, and exposure together drive triage, because numbers without context mislead. Begin with the scanner's base severity, then adjust using exploit availability, compensating controls, asset criticality, and network position. Public exploit code or active abuse in the wild should raise priority. Strong segmentation, lack of reachability, or temporary isolation may lower it, but document the reasoning. Exposure time also matters. A medium severity flaw open for months can outrank a brand new high severity issue if the older item sits on a critical patient system. Build a simple rubric that control owners understand and can apply consistently. In practice, triage clarity removes arguments, turns attention toward fixes, and creates a repeatable pattern that assessors can follow from intake to closure without guessing why one item moved ahead of another. Actively exploited vulnerabilities move first, full stop. When credible intelligence shows exploitation in the wild, elevate those items to the highest lane and trigger accelerated timelines. Create a standing playbook that connects intelligence sources to tickets, assigns responders, and defines temporary mitigations like isolation, configuration hardening, or compensating monitoring while patches are validated. A small example helps. A widely used library receives an emergency advisory with proof of exploit. Your process tags affected services within hours, routes work to owners, and places inbound filters at the edge until application fixes ship. Evidence of this fast lane includes time-stamped alerts, owner acknowledgments, and change records that reference the advisory. Prioritizing exploited issues demonstrates that your program is tuned to real risk, which is a core expectation for R2. Remediation targets must align to risk categories so effort and timing are predictable. Set clear service levels for critical, high, medium, and low priority items, and measure results at the asset group and service level, not only in aggregate. Targets can be short for externally exposed systems and slightly longer for segmented internal hosts, but the rules must be written and enforced. Avoid open-ended deadlines. Use calendar days and prove adherence with dated evidence. When an item misses its target, escalate automatically and capture the reason in the record. Over time, service-level performance becomes a leading indicator of security health. Leadership wants to see fewer late items, shrinking backlog age, and improved time to remediate after detection. Those trends tell the story that processes are maturing, not simply moving tickets around. Exceptions are sometimes necessary, but they must expire, and they must be approved at the right level. An exception should state the vulnerability, the reason remediation is delayed, the compensating safeguards in place, the specific expiration date, and the accountable owner. Without those elements, an exception is just a stall. Consider the case of a legacy medical device that cannot accept the vendor patch without recertification. Network isolation, tight access lists, and enhanced monitoring can compensate temporarily, but only with documented sign-off and a planned replacement timeline. Track exceptions centrally, report on counts and ages, and review them before each assessment window. Time-boxed exceptions show conscious risk management. Rolling waivers without end signal, a process that avoids hard choices. R2 expects the former. Rescan verification and closure evidence are the proof that remediation worked as intended. Closing a ticket without a confirming scan or functional test undermines trust. For configuration changes, include before and after records with timestamps and host identifiers. For patches, show the vulnerability no longer appears and the new version is present. For network mitigations, provide rule identifiers and logs that demonstrate enforcement. When a fix is phased, keep the ticket open until the last system is complete and use subtasks to avoid premature closure. Build a simple practice: no green status without a new signal. This habit eliminates debates with assessors because the artifact speaks for itself. It also prevents regressions from slipping back into production unnoticed. Vulnerability metrics and leadership reporting convert raw activity into accountability and direction. Useful measures include coverage rates for authenticated scans, time to remediate by risk category, aging of open findings, exception counts by owner, and the percentage of exploited items closed within target. Present them by product or business service so leaders can allocate resources where they matter. Trend lines reveal whether improvements hold or fade after a push. Pair numbers with short narratives that explain causes and planned actions, not excuses. When leadership sees consistent coverage, faster closures, and declining backlog age, they recognize real progress. When the opposite appears, they can intervene with funding, staffing, or scope decisions. Metrics are not decoration in R2. They are the way you manage the program between assessments. Third-party and inherited scope must be visible in the same workflow, because customers remain accountable for outcomes even when providers operate controls. If your platform vendor scans the hypervisor or managed services, obtain their reports, dates, and coverage statements and map them to your environment. For customer-managed layers, keep your own process intact. Where a provider's report shows issues, track your dependent risks and actions, such as patching your images or changing configurations that amplify the provider weakness. Treat suppliers with the same triage logic you apply internally, and include them in leadership reporting so blind spots cannot hide behind contracts. Inheritance reduces duplicate testing, but it never removes the need to understand, react, and prove oversight. Integration with the change management process turns remediation from a side hustle into routine work. Tie vulnerability tickets to change records, so approvals, testing notes, and implementation windows are visible end-to-end. Standard changes for routine patches can flow quickly with guardrails, while emergency changes for exploited items use an expedited path with clear rollback plans. After deployment, post-change validation should reference the original finding and include the confirming rescan. This linkage prevents shadow fixes, ensures production discipline, and creates a single trail that assessors can follow. It also lets operations plan capacity so vulnerability work does not collide with peak business cycles. When change and remediation move together, reliability increases and surprises decrease. Common pitfalls include partial asset coverage, stale credentials for scanners, over-reliance on unauthenticated probes, and bulky backlogs that never shrink. Another is treating risk categories as labels rather than triggers, which leaves exploited items buried among routine work. Sustainable fixes address root causes. Auto-discovery closes visibility gaps. Vaulted service accounts keep credentials fresh. Agent plus network approaches capture ephemeral systems, and strict service-level tracking turns labels into action. Finally, a steady cadence of small daily wins beats quarterly surges that exhaust teams and produce rework. R2 rewards programs that operate predictably, not perfectly. The goal is fewer surprises and faster recovery, backed by artifacts that are easy to read and hard to dispute. A timely, risk-based vulnerability program is a hallmark of mature R2 operations. It begins with full asset coverage, gathers deep authenticated evidence, and watches the internet-facing edge without pause. It ranks issues by real-world danger, moves exploited items first, and proves closure with fresh rescans. It handles exceptions with discipline, reports trends leaders can act on, and integrates with change so fixes land cleanly. It respects provider roles while retaining accountability, and it avoids shortcuts that trade today's relief for tomorrow's debt. Build these habits, keep the heartbeat steady, and your vulnerability management story will read as inevitable. Threats arrived, you found them, you prioritized well, you fixed them on time, and you proved it.